Meeting for Thursday, October 5th, 2023. Appreciate you being here, and we're looking forward to hearing from as many of you as possible. Okay, so tonight the opening is presented by Councilmember Mike Blackham. Following his opening, he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Just have a word of prayer, and then we'll stand after that and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father in heaven, we're indeed grateful that we're able to meet today in the city of Kaysville and hopefully discuss things in our area that affect our lives. We are so grateful that we are able to live in an area such as this. We're grateful for all the many blessings that we receive. We're so thankful that we can come before a meeting like this and do so in a reasonable, very honorable manner. Please bless our city employees that they can carry the tasks throughout that they have to do, and they can do that safely and with no harm to them or their families. Please bless that everybody tonight will be able to leave this meeting and travel home and safely. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't have... Oh, do you have the list? Okay. Okay. All right, so for those who are new to City Council, I'm going to explain to you the way our council meetings work, and just to give you a little refresher for those that come often and maybe that watch them online. Okay, the first item that we have is called Call to the Public. So several of you have signed up to speak. You'll have 3 minutes, and the way it works is like this. You come up to the mic, just state your first name. You don't have to share your address. You'll have 3 minutes. The timer will start, and at the end of the 3 minutes, your microphone will be dead. You'll be done. So that means that you're not broadcasting and it's not recording anymore. We give you that time so that you have an opportunity to speak to us uninterrupted. We are respectful. We don't respond back to your questions. If you have questions, we will try to address them as we have our opportunities to discuss during the meeting. So we'll take notes up here, but mostly it'll be us smiling at you. So we just want to prepare you for that so that you're not just wondering why we're not responding to you. Okay, so that's how Call to the Public works. After that, we'll have a presentation. We'll be swearing in the 2023-24 Youth City Council members, and then we'll go to our action items. So to begin with, I will list your names in order. If you'll come up as I read your names, you'll have your 3 minutes, and then please end your comments when the 3-minute timer ends. The first individual to speak will be Garrett Gross, Kara Hurst, Larry Story, I knew that. Larry Story, Chris Doxey, and then Douglas Foster, I think it says. Wait a second. Oh, that was the action items. Never mind. Okay, wrong list. Public comment. Okay, we only have 2. So, Brig Lewis and Lorene Starkey. Come on down. Thank you, Anne Marie.
My name is Brig Lewis, and I live up on 1050 East, and I'm here to grumble. In all talking to my neighbors, the Connect people come through our area a couple of weeks ago. We got great big green boxes in our front yards. I have 1. My neighbor has 3, and others have similar amounts. At least they were a little bit kind about how they cleaned up behind themselves. We got a new one come through this past week, and it's CenturyLink. And they have come through. They've lied to our neighbors. They have been disrespectful, and they don't care. They've torn up sprinkler pipes, and when people have challenged them, no, they don't do anything. And they tell us that there's a 3rd one coming through. And if he's worse, if it's going like this, and the next one's going to be bad. We're going to have a slum city if we keep going down this path. My front yard, I have a new green box, 3 feet high. 1 foot in diameter, 1 foot square. Yep, my neighbor has one too, right on his corner. He's on a corner lot. It's not out in the park strip. These are on the yard side. But I've talked to a couple of people and they've said, oh no, the city doesn't do that. The city had to give them a permit. Somebody in the city can tell them to cease and desist, but they seem to be uninterested in what is happening. They don't care if they tear up gardens, trees, it doesn't matter. And a number of my neighbors, I have not found one of them that expressed any kind thoughts for these things. One of them even called up somebody in the city and threw them out till the supervisor comes back to talk, because they weren't there. There's a single lady. She come home after school with her kids. There's guys digging in her backyard. She goes out and says, what are you doing here? Oh, we got permission from the landowner. He gave us, we talked to him there at the house and he gave us permission. Yeah, there isn't one, it's her. So they don't care. And if we keep going like this, I don't know what we're going to have. They're working the 4 feet from the sidewalk in because they understand they can use that. So I don't know what they're going to do. If they hit any of the electrical lines, that'll cause problems for the city because the city will have to repair them. But I'm just grumbling. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Thank you, Brig.
Thanks, Bruce.
Lorraine? Lorraine. Yeah.
Laureen Starkey, 573 South, 350 East, Kaysville, Utah. I just wanted to share something exciting and something not so exciting. The first exciting thing was that the last 3 weeks, I got a text while I was visiting my daughter in Georgia from someone that sees us a lot and wondered if we were okay because we were gone.
That's nice.
I want to tell you where we were. We were looking for property that was surveyed by George Washington for my husband's 5th great-grandfather who served in the Revolutionary War, which was really exciting. We're looking for the records, and in the records, we couldn't find the records because some of the records had been burned because the city had changed hands 56 times in the Civil War. So I always have lived in the North. I lived in New Hampshire and North Dakota and Wyoming and Washington State. And I've always been on the side of the Union because they were the good guys and they helped to make a united states. And then I heard the story from the Confederates that felt like they were being bossed around by the big guys. And they didn't feel like that they were listened to. And their records were burned. And they had to do a lot of things to save their city and save their people. So we came home and found that our refrigerator and freezer had been unplugged for 3 weeks. And that's what we've been doing for 24 hours, and I want to bring that to this meeting, and that is the importance of being plugged in. And I am so grateful for our city council who are choosing to remember where they get their power. And some of the people that I've spoken to that are so concerned that maybe we're concerned a little bit more about the funding than the people that are in the city. And we are grateful for our city that is listening. I was reading in the Psalms this morning, and it said, "Blessed be the Lord, for he has showed me the marvelous kindness in a strong city." Psalms 31. I want you to know that we are grateful for the cities in American Fork and Orem and some of these people that may be a little bit off the margins that are saying maybe we do not have to be pushed around, and as a city we can choose to listen to the things that we want rather than the federal government or the money wants. And I'm grateful for some discerning council members and discerning of where they get their power and that they're plugged in. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you very
for listening
much.
tonight.
I'm going to take this off. It's a little warm in here. Just a sec. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Okay. So we are going to move to the swearing in of our 2023 Youth City Council. I'm going to turn the time over to Council Member John Adams to introduce these students who are fantastic, and we're so excited that they're here to participate. And we'll take it from there.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Tran, and welcome everybody tonight. It's so fun to have people in the audience. Sometimes we're looking at just chairs. I would encourage you to stay until the very end of the meeting. That's when the fun happens. But now, Youth City Council. So, Linda, should we have them all come up? Okay, let's have all of the Youth City Council please come up. Either side, both sides. We don't have any music to play for you, but
We should have walk-on music
yeah.
for you. I'm sorry.
Oh,
The Rocky theme would be better.
all right. We'll have you guys all face the audience. I told them that I'm going to do a Sound of Music style. When I say their name, I expect them to step forward, kind of like Brigitte, right?
Okay.
Fritz or whatever. Okay, here we go. So if you're here, please step forward, and we're going to say hold your applause until the end. Kaya, and if I mess up your name, tell me. Kaya Cisne. Michaela Heath. Maddie Miller. No, not yet.
No.
Okay. How about Kate Miller?
All right.
Yeah, all right. Maybe we
That
should
was a nice wave.
continue
That was
the
really good.
applause. Yeah.
Really good.
Mia Shimmer.
Good job, Mia. Okay, great.
One of my relatives, Natalie Barlow. McKay Clemens.
Fantastic.
Layla Kimmel. Jane Weston.
Nice.
Reagan Larson.
Good job, Reagan.
Caden West. Morgan Becker. Luke Cadwallader.
Oh.
Cadwallader? Did I say it right? All right,
way you
man.
said that right.
Where's your name originate from, Luke? Do you know? Norway. Okay, very cool. Kimball Stinger. Chloe Cisne.
Nice.
Am I saying Cisne? Is that correct? Cisne. Okay, like Disney. Not really. Laurie Dent. Annie Jones. Bodie Shimmer. Lucy Ellis. And Marcy West. Okay, round of applause.
Thank you.
You swear me in, right? Okay, you guys, now you're going to get sworn in. Anne-Marie, you'll do the swearing. No, Mayor will. Who does the swearing? Or we have Representative Barlow here.
Representative Barlow.
Is that
come
what
on
you're thinking?
down. Do you want to swear him in?
She was looking over that way. I didn't know if that's why.
Where's the... Just a second.
So maybe we're just do a little stalling here. How many of you are in ninth grade? Ninth? Okay. Which school do you go to?
I go to Career Path High at DTC.
Oh, no way. That's awesome. So something interesting about Representative Barlow, his family started DTC, right? It was DATC when they started it. Okay, 10th grade.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah? Okay, what schools? Davis. 11th? Yeah, what schools?
Davis High and Davis Campus.
Okay, the Catalyst. That's awesome. Same. Okay, Davis. And is Davis playing Farmington tonight?
Yes.
And you guys are missing that game? Oh my gosh. Okay, and what about 12th grade?
12th grade.
Seniors? Okay.
Four
Davis,
seniors.
any Farmington?
Am I doing
Yeah, okay, Farmington. I like it. Okay, we got the swearing in. Here we go.
Just a second. Can you hear me? Okay. All right, you guys, thanks for being patient with us. We appreciate it. I also have to mention that they just gave me this necklace from the Scarecrow that they made for the USU Scarecrow Walk. So thanks, guys, for doing that. They represented Kaysville really well. They made a great big Barbie Scarecrow, and it was really fun for everybody. So you guys are awesome. They also get to go to the Day at the Capitol, Day at the Legislature, I think is what it's called, and they get to learn about the state and how the legislation works, and they're great volunteers for us, and so they just do a lot, and they have their own city council meeting, and we get to come and watch them officiate that. So anyway, lots of great things. So thanks for being willing to serve, you guys. This is very cool, and we're very proud of you. Okay, here's the swearing in. If you'll raise your right hand. Okay, say I and then repeat your name. I, do solemnly swear, that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Utah, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Okay, thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. Will you guys wait right there? We want to take a picture with you. Okay, all right, let's move in.
You guys are awesome.
Whoops. Okay, thanks everybody, and thanks for being here, families and youth city court or city council. That's pretty amazing to have you here and participating. All right, council, do we have any conflicts of interest to declare as we move forward? No? Okay, all right, seeing none, we'll move forward. So the first item on our agenda is an action item. It's consideration of a development agreement and request to rezone 2.397 acres of 41 West 100 South from R18 single family residential to RM multifamily residential for Hal T. Anderson. Before I turn the time over to Melinda on this, I just wanted to quickly mention that we have received a lot of great feedback from the community. And I think we received over 30 emails and lots of phone calls and lots of text messages. And I just want to give a quick shout out to our council and our staff, because I think people don't realize how much is involved when you serve on city council. It's not just showing up to meetings. It's a lot of groundwork, legwork, lots of homework. And I'm going to give a huge shout out to our council, because I know they won't toot their own horns. But I'm so grateful to be able to work with this group of people, because they really care about what happens in Kaysville. You know, a lot of times people will come to us and they'll say, well, we don't like this, we don't like this, and they act as though we don't live here too, you know, and we do live here, and the reason that we're preserving is because we love our community so much. And so I just appreciate the work of the council. They've all met with you, they've all responded to emails, they've answered lots of phone calls, they've done a lot of homework and research. And so as we're up here making decisions, I just want you to know that there's a lot of a lot of research and a lot of conversations that happen outside before we get to this council to make decisions, because we want to make sure that we understand, that we're informed, and that we're communicating with our residents and our neighbors, because you're all our friends. So shout out to staff and to the city council for that, and I'll turn the time over to Melinda, who also puts in a lot of time, lots and lots of hours in our behalf, so thank you. No. You can use the handheld one. Is it on now? I don't think so. I don't think it's on.
Well, I'll just start with this so we don't.
I think it was the other one that worked for me. Yeah.
All right, is that working? Okay. I normally sit, but I'm just going to share a little bit of a personal experience. So last October, I had back surgery. I was laid up in bed for a few weeks, and during that time, I came across a Taylor Swift documentary. So I watched it. I kind of became a fan. She had a new album that came out last, I think, December. And one of the songs on there is called The Anti-Hero. So with a little bit of levity, a lot of times in my role as community development director and staff, we feel like the anti-hero, because what we're saying or presenting is the opposite of what most people in the audience want to hear. So I will try and get through this quickly and just leave the bulk of the time for the city council to have a discussion. But as mentioned, we're here talking about an application that was submitted by Hal Anderson, who owns the property at 41 West, 100 South. The lot size, there's two separate parcels, but it combines to 2.39 acres. It's currently zoned R18 single family, which means minimum lot square footage of 8,000 square feet. And our R18 zoning would allow for 13 single-family units based on straight math and the acreage. That doesn't always equate to what is actually feasible on the ground. Our code also allows, through a conditional use permit, what's called a twin homes. And the conditional use permit is something that we take to the Planning Commission. It's really not something that they can deny. So in theory, the actually density entitlement over there could be as many as 26 units, which would be 13 twin homes. So the RM zoning allows, again, by straight math, that 37 units could fit on the property. I mentioned in the staff report, I really don't think that many units would be possible. The RM zone has, you have setbacks, you have parking requirements, you have open space requirements, and each of those regulations constrains the site. And, so we don't, as staff, we don't lay these out. That's just not what our role is. But I don't think they really could fit more than about 30 units if they maximized everything. So, but we do want to just put that out there, that in theory 37 would be possible. So this is just an aerial view of the property located over there on 50 West and just south of 100 South. This is a zone map of the area. You can see there's a variety of different zonings. There's R4. We have some RM zoning, healthcare, public or professional business, some central commercial, single family, the R18 zone, and then also to the north of that is the residential town site zone. The 2022 plan that was adopted by the council last year does contain information and goals and objectives which support this application. And when we look at whether or not we want to change a zone on a property, we really look to that general plan to see how much evidence is there. Generally speaking, you'll find some for and against, but we look at where's the bulk of that information fall. And in this instance, there's a couple of the guiding principles that are relevant. Provide diverse housing options. The RM zone, we don't have a lot of that zoning in the community. So townhomes type of housing would be, I think, a little bit more diverse than our 92% single family that we have throughout the city. So there's also, with the proximity of just how close this is to the city center in the downtown area that was identified in that plan, I feel like adding a little bit of density close to that area would support this principle of enriching city center and downtown. This is the city center concept that was identified in the general plan, so you can just see the proximity of that property being that close to the historic Main Street and the city center area. The future land use map is one element of the general plan. The general plan is about 90 pages. And the first thing we tend to look at when we're considering a rezone is the future land use map. And in this instance, the future land use map does depict this property as remaining as single-family residential. So that's definitely one thing to consider. We look at some of our other chapters, and there is evidence in Chapter 1, which is our land use and placemaking plan, that supports this application. That goal is listed there on the screen. I won't go through these in great detail. They were in your staff reports. I think the strongest chapter and the strongest or the most compelling justification for a rezone is our Chapter 3 housing and neighborhood. And the state, over the course of the last probably 7 years, has really tried to push cities to adopt zoning that is more likely to produce moderate income level of properties. So not your high end of your $1 million plus homes. Generally speaking, that involves some density, smaller lot sizes, shared walls, which the RM allows for attached dwellings. So the state has required that not every city, but there's 93 cities and counties that had to adopt in their general plan certain elements out of state code. And the expectation that they have is that because we adopted these items, that we will follow through and make the approvals that these goals and objectives support. So objective 1 is, allow for higher density and mixed use within the city center to diversify housing stock. Again, with the proximity of the city center being so close, felt like that was something to consider. Objective 1.3 says that we will rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. We also had to have implementation measures for each of these objectives. And one of those was that staff would give a positive recommendation if the future land use map and elements of the general plan supported the rezone. We said, though, that if that future land use map wasn't aligned with what the zone change application was, that we would give strong consideration. So that's one of the reasons why, again, this application should have some thorough thought. And then, of course, the other one on there is that zone or rezone for higher density in commercial or mixed use zones near major transit investment corridors, commercial centers, or employment centers. So we do have transit that runs along Main Street, and then again, this is just a stone's throw from some commercial areas. So that said, I was able to speak with a representative from the state that does the compliance checks for the moderate income housing. And I laid out this scenario and tried to get an answer as to if approval or denial were to happen, if they would find us in compliance or in non-compliance. And to be, I think, frank, the answer to that is, I just don't know. And they can't really say. I think this was the first year that we've all submitted what they're calling the repeat reporting. Sorry, I'm blanking on the right term. We have not yet heard back as to whether or not we were compliant. So that's just something the council should consider. And if we are found to be in noncompliance, the state has put in penalties into place. They've put fines. They've put the potential of losing funding opportunities. We would have grants that we would not be eligible to apply for, that type of thing. So the council knows that. We talk about that pretty much every time there's a rezone, but just wanted to touch on that again. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about differences between the R18 zone and the RM zone. From the standpoint of height setbacks, there's really not much of a difference. There is a slight increase in side yard setbacks when you have the RM zone. So that's one positive to consider, that the side yard setbacks would be increased based on the number of units. So we did have a public notice sent out. Our ordinance requires that we notify everybody within a 500-foot radius. So as of September 14th, we had 20 emails. This was for the Planning Commission. We did get quite a few emails after that, and then the council has received a number of emails this week, as the mayor has mentioned. But the concerns expressed by the citizens are listed up there in orange. There are very common concerns from residents when change is being proposed. So one of the major themes I think that was recurring, especially with the public comments in the Planning Commission meeting, was just that there was no development agreement, there was no plan or project. And so the unknown of that, I think, was really one of the main things that was concerning to people. So the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing about this item on the 14th. We only had 4 commissioners there that night, which is pretty rare, but they issued a recommendation of approval with a vote of 3-1. That had a condition that the City Council approve with a development agreement, but they did not provide any guidance for what would be contained in that development agreement. So essentially, that's up to the council. It would be up to the council anyway, because you're the deciding body for rezones. The applicant did send this to the mayor earlier today. This is a layout, I think, that was proposed perhaps last year when they were working with some developers. The pink townhomes are the ones that would front 50 West. And this, I think, shows a total of 32 townhomes. A lot of the concern from the public, too, was about traffic and parking. So, general math, and people that are in the development world just kind of know this offhand, but a single family residence generates between 10 and 12 trips a day. So if you had 13 single family homes, that's 130 trips a day. If you had the twin homes, that's twice as many, 260. So it's a little counterintuitive, but multifamily generates fewer trips. There's usually not as many cars. There's usually not as many drivers in a household in a smaller household. So the email from the applicant said that developers they met with last year said that anywhere between 28 and 32 townhomes could be feasible on the site. So I just listed at 6 trips a day, so which I just rounded up both of those. It was like 9.5 something on the single family and 5.6 something. So just rounded up on both of those, but you can see that may look like a lot of a difference, but it's just really not, especially when you start talking of traffic volumes. Like Main Street itself carries 14,000 vehicles a day. So the difference of, 100 trips, 30 trips, just really is pretty minor. So one of the things that I did point out to the Planning Commission, and I think it's worth for the council to consider, is there are some benefits that you can have by having the zone change approved to RM. And one of those is just the simple fact of you would minimize the number of ingress and egress points. So, what this is showing here is one access point up on 100 South and then one on 50 West. If it were to be rezoned, that's what I would anticipate, that we would have just 2 driveways. One of the benefits, again, of a layout with the RM is that, generally speaking, people are not backing out of a driveway. They are pulling out front nose into traffic, which is just a safer environment. So we had a rezone last year that the council denied. There was a development agreement with it that would have limited it to 6 units. The neighborhood over there is going to get 6 units anyway and 6 driveways. So with the rezone, they would have had the same amount of units, but they would have just been limited to 1 entrance and exit. So that's just something to consider. And then again, the Planning Commission issued a recommendation of approval, and I will just turn the time over to the council for discussion and questions.
Okay, thank you for that staff report. So before we turn the time over to ourselves for questions, we do have public comment. And so I'll reiterate what I said at the beginning of the meeting in terms of how that process works. And before I do that, I wanted to just quickly kind of explain the role of the different roles. Planning Commission is an appointed body. Their job is to look at the general plan, look at state code, and make recommendations to the City Council based upon those things. So so sometimes Planning Commission's recommendations are great. You know, they're always great, but they come to council, and sometimes the council listens to that and takes that and maybe makes a decision that sounds similar, and sometimes they don't. The staff's position and the staff's job in a city is to take the general plan and the advice and the recommendations from Planning Commission to create a staff report, and their job is to just base that information on what they have on hand. Theirs is administrative, it's not legislative. They just basically go off of facts. The general plan, as many of you know, was updated last year. We finalized it last year, and it was approved by the City Council. That was based on data that was collected over almost 2 years, going out, issuing surveys to the city, asking people in the community, what would you like to see Kaysville look like, basing it on what we already had. And so that general plan is kind of the guiding document that we use as a city to plan future needs and future growth. And so those are the different roles. And then City Council's job is a legislative body. So our ability to look at this and really decide, okay, this makes sense or doesn't, is based upon all of that information. And it's also based upon, it's very subjective, really, too. So we base it upon the recommendations from Planning Commission, the recommendation from staff, the input that we receive from the property owner, as well as the residents in the neighborhood. So those are the different hats that people wear as we go through this process. So I just wanted you to understand that for those of you that are maybe new to this process. Okay, so now I'll turn the time over to those who've signed up for public comment. Again, you have 3 minutes. You'll be uninterrupted. We will listen, and we will be respectful while you share your thoughts. And this is the order that I'd like you to come up in. Garrett Gross, Kara Hurst, Laurie Story, Chris Doxey, and then, what was that last one? Go.
Douglas Foster.
Yes, Douglas Foster, thank you. So I invite you to come on down. Thank you.
Mayor Tran, council members, my name is Garrett Gross. I'm a 13-year resident of Kaysville. I live at 168 South Gailey Lane, just around the corner from the current proposed property that's the subject of discussion. As we just heard, much of the concern and arguments in favor of the proposed rezone seem to center around state compliance with state mandates and compliance with various housing requirements that the state is pushing and proposing. The problem with that and a lot of the discussion that is centered around in favor of the proposed rezone is that it's premature, given the fact that we don't even, as was I think admitted and conceded, we don't even know whether or not we're in, or we have received no guidance that we're not in compliance with state mandates, with state laws. As far as had a conversation with former Mayor Nika Roundy, and basically, to her understanding and to the understanding of many, we are currently in compliance. I mean, that's, I guess, for you to verify with state laws. So any discussion to rezone and to comply with strictly for the purpose of complying with state law is far premature until we're pushing some thresholds or some triggers that would indicate that we might be hedging, out of mandates. I professionally, in my professional capacity, I work for I'm in-house counsel for a local lender. I does a lot of low-income housing tax credit, multifamily, single-family housing developments, and I have to say, which this is not going to be. It's not going to be. And so the appetite amongst the lending community for those types of developments is I mean, I can't quote, everything, but the appetite for those is diminishing because a lot of those non-low income housing multifamily developments, the demand's decreasing. And the demand is actually trending more towards these first-time home buyers that want the home, the yard, and they want something that's affordable. We had, I think, State Senator Stuart Adams, who is a large real estate investor in the state, has recently backed off of sort of a push professionally as well as within the state for multifamily housing because essentially this very reason, the demand just does not seem to be there. And in fact, he just recently proposed, I think it passed, don't quote me for sure, but a $20,000 credit to all first-time home buyers. I mean, first-time home buyers, they want that home, at least locally, they want that home, they want that yard. The other item that's of obvious concern is the infrastructure support. The studies that were just presented here, if you look, all of those focused on proposed ideas within the property itself. I didn't see any data that supported, a traffic study, a feasibility study, all of the external infrastructure that would go to support a rezone that was probably at least considered by the council when the general plan was formed. No data has shown that a change wouldn't have adverse consequences to the surrounding community, or that the infrastructure is there to support a proposed rezone. My time up.
Your time is up. Thank you.
My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kara Hurst, and I live also on Gateway Lane, just east of this property. And you guys are our voice, and you guys seem to have the power right now. And we hope that you can hear us and feel what we're trying to do. And we understand development, it's not a bad thing, and we just want to have our voices heard. I oppose the rezone for a couple reasons. I believe it's premature because we don't have a developer's plan. That one that Melinda put up, that was the first I've seen of it, and I feel the city loses significant leverage when they approve something like that. If we approve it now, we don't have the say in having the developer have certain entrance and exits, or maybe they can keep a percentage of the trees on that property, or we can maybe control some of the aesthetics so it's not that big black box that's over by Winco that a certain developer just built. Anyways, to just maybe keep it with that old town feel. We don't have that right now. Also, I think it's premature, Garrett touched on this, that there's no traffic study. That intersection, 100 South, 500 West, and Main Street, that is wonky and weird, especially at certain times, like when kids are going to school and coming out of school. That intersection gets really weird, turning left onto 50 West to then go onto Main Street. And I would love to see a traffic study of what 37 townhomes and that traffic would do to the area. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
My name's Laurie Story, and I live at 35 North, 100 West. And I have lived there for 36 years, so I've seen a lot of amazing changes in the time that I was there. As a neighborhood, starting decades ago, we were all involved in changing all of First West, all of Main Street, behind Main Street, and Main Street from central commercial. It was originally zoned that, and we kind of didn't know. And as a neighborhood, we were able to change that back side of that into residential property. And the homeowners of those big, beautiful houses like Gibbs Smith, came and said, I want this to be a residence. I don't want this to be commercial. This was something that was really important. During that time, the Rampton family, who had the orthodontic practice across the street, of course, wanted to keep that. in some kind of a commercial something, but they also didn't want Central Commercial and a McDonald's across the street, so they invited us into their beautiful home, and we had a discussion as a neighborhood, and that is how we came up with professional business. That came because of that collaboration. Then the next thing that we worked on was the old town site zoning, so that we could get some support and some recognition from the city of those who are really working so hard to preserve the history. We're the only historical town site designation in the entire city. And we have these beautiful homes and buildings that we really do want to keep, because we lose history and we can never get it back again. We never, ever can get it back again. And in changing zoning to something that's more profitable, we are incentivizing the tearing down of old homes instead of incentivizing the preservation of old homes. And you know, we look at what is necessary in the city in the way of multifamily housing, and you know what? We are doing it. We are contributing. We have, within 4 blocks of that space, 167 choices of multiple family housing. We have government subsidized housing. We have more expensive townhousey kind of rent. We have so many choices right in there. To say that we are not doing our bit is not looking at the map that you all received that shows that we are really doing our bit there, as are we to the tax base. We are shouldering, you know, the businesses on Main Street and all down 2nd North. We've lost so many old homes to that development, but it's a tax base, and we're contributing to that as well. So what we need from you all now is to help us preserve what we still have. We need those beautiful old homes and that history preserved, and there are people willing to do it. The Simpsons and the Christophers and the Christensens and the Matthewsons and people who've lived with porta potties because they didn't have any plumbing yet, and old houses that were covered with white paint, just like the one, you know, the Rampton house was, that are now cleaned up and looking amazing, the Z house. You know, there are people willing to preserve this history, and if we can find them, it would be awesome if we could let them. So cutting ourselves off the knees with not a plan, changing to multiple family housing at this point, just doesn't give us the opportunity to find the right person to possibly give the money to the homeowner that wants that, you know, the money to get out of that land, but still allow it to be something that fits in with the neighborhood and supports the preservation of history. Like I said, once we
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks for the time. So I just wanted to make 2 points. The first was just a couple of quotes from the planning committee when we met with them, when they made the decision, that I just wanted to talk to. So the first one was that we lack affordable housing. That was one reason they voted for this. Without a plan, you don't actually know that this is affordable housing at all. This isn't planned to be subsidized in any way, shape, or form. If you look at the statistics for the state of Utah, multifamily price per square foot and single-family residential price per square foot is not any different. This isn't going to be affordable per square foot. They mentioned Kaysville not doing their share on multifamily homes, and they referenced that 93%. Like Laurie said, 93% is for the entire city. If you look at our community, that does not apply. We are not 93% single-family housing. We are much higher in multifamily than that. The other one was there's multiple points about it being very walkable. I fail to see how walkability has anything to do with zoning, and why people who live in single-family homes couldn't walk just as well as multifamily homes. There was a study that they referenced that more and more people are wanting multifamily homes. The head of the committee referenced that. I looked up that study, and the study said more and more people are choosing multifamily homes, but 95% of them want single-family homes. That's not what the study showed at all. And then the last one was just the minimization of egress and ingress. Again, without a plan, you have no idea. I mean, I can draw anything up there too that might show something great, but without any plan, who knows what it would be. And then my second point, so we used to own the property of 75 East and Crestwood Road, across from Heritage Park, and there's, I think, 4 or 5 homes there now on the street. We sold that property. The developer came and wanted to rezone it to multifamily. You said no to that. Also, the community garden was brought forward to be rezoned, and we said no to that. And the only reason I bring those up is because they're similar properties. They're surrounded by other single-family homes. If you look at the map, and this is the reason, you just look at the map. It's easy to see multifamily. They're bright yellow on that zoning map. If you look at all of those, there's buffer between all of those and the single-family homes. That's just how Kaysville does it. It's either commercial or some sort of healthcare or some sort of twin home before you get to that single-family residential. In this case, we would have 3 sides that around this multifamily that are single-family residential. There's no other property in the city like that that has it on 3 sides like that. There is one that shares a backyard, like I would, with it, and all 3 other sides are surrounded by commercial. I think that is a pretty risky precedent to set for the city, and to create a place where you're creating a new type of zoning, a way where we're carving out things out of our multifamily, out of our single-family residential. And it's risky with no plan to set that sort of precedent. And so I would hesitate, and I would say no to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. What was your name?
Chris.
Chris Doxey. Okay, Douglas, come on down, and then I'll call the other 5.
Thank you for the time to talk. My name is Doug Foster. I'm at 898 East 400 South over in Laurelwood in Kaysville. Just a couple questions. Actually a statement first. If someone brought this proposal to me in my professional capacity, I would throw it back in their lap and say I'm not dealing with this because, there is literally no data for you guys to make a decision on, period, other than a possible picture. There's no sewer impact, no water impact, no power impact, no parking impact, no water runoff impact, no school impact. I have had the pleasure of living here for 8 years, and I've seen my kids go through elementary, middle school, and high school in this city, and not one of them avoided at some point being in a dislocated trailer off the side of the school because there just wasn't enough capacity in the school. So if you're going to add another 37 families, theoretically, and Utah's not known for small families, this could be a large impact on things that we're not seeing. And I don't think you've been provided any of that data to make a decision from the planning committee. So I think they've kind of saddled you with a really difficult problem set with no real data to make a decision on other than a picture. I also agree with some of the other statements that have been made that you really don't have the backing of the community, and there's a lot of significant problems with moving into a residential area with some significant input or with some significant impact from a larger than single family home. For example, the mixed residency that is available on the main street going in the middle of Kaysville, which we now have our 4th car wash in the town, would have been a different location to possibly put some affordable housing. And I'm also going to probably reference some of the affordable housing where there is no availability, or at least the city, to subsidize this housing. There's probably not going to be any caps on what they can charge for this housing, and it's going to be very difficult for us to conform that as affordable housing. My last real concern is the state's kind of put you in a capricious area of, we want you to increase the amount of affordable housing, but they've given you no percentage on how much of the city that means, what affordable housing means, who's going to end up paying for it if it goes above that rate. And I think we ought to push back as a city saying, if you want us to move towards a more affordable housing metric, then you have to give me a defined metric to fix, because as the State Planning Commission said, we don't know where we're at, and we don't know if this is going to get rejected or in compliance or non-compliance. You're going to have a very difficult time defending yourself or advocating for yourself when you have no actual metric to base it against. So I think it's really tough for you guys to put in, but I'm not really for or against. I think you could avoid a lot of these questions if the data was put in the upfront and give the community a chance to look at it before it comes up to a vote. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, the next 5 are Aaron Clark, Kirk Hughes, Mark Quillen. Okay. Nika Roundy and Wenfai Yu. Did I say that right? Okay.
Okay, my name is Erin, and I live on 300 West, literally where the sidewalk ends by the stoplight. I just wanted to share something that is in the Kaysville General Plan. It's the goals and objective, and goal number 1 is to preserve and protect Kaysville's small-town atmosphere by limiting change in functioning neighborhoods and districts. Objective 1.1 is preserve single-family neighborhoods by restricting development to models that the existing character of the neighborhood. Implementation measure is to preserve existing ordinances and codes that support single-family dwellings in established neighborhoods. Another thing, it says encourage conservation, subdivisions on vacant undeveloped residential parcels identified in the future land use map. In the appendix of the general plan, it talks about the development priorities, and the majority of the people wanted to preserve single-family neighborhoods. Another thing and concern that I have, it shares the traffic calming in the neighborhoods. Our neighborhood is a big cut-through, and it talks about identifying potential cut-through routes and making them unattractive. And so my thing for you to consider is, what are you going to do to limit the traffic of the people that cut through these neighborhoods as more traffic is there? And that's really what I have to say, so thanks for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kirk Hughes. I am a resident of the area. I live in Gailey Court, so I live just 2 blocks directly west of the proposed area. I sent letters to the City Council and to the mayor, so I appreciate you guys taking the time to read those and really listen to the feedback of people that live in the area. I think that's valuable. I know there's a lot of opinion that can get shared from people that don't live in the area, but we actually live here, and this is our home. I'm not opposed to development. I'm actually in favor of development, but of course opposed to the rezoning of this. Let me just go over a couple of my points. Number one, I had an issue in the Planning Commission meeting that there was a comment that was made that we in this area need to be more open to the diversity of housing and the people that those bring, and I have an issue with that. When I first moved here 13 years ago, a resident of this area told me that I had just moved into the island of the misfit toys. And it's because this area in Kaysville is diverse. It has the most diverse housing. It has the most diversity in political ideology. It really is a diverse area in Kaysville. And one of my concerns is that we have a disproportionate amount of multifamily housing here. It exists all in this area. And within blocks, we have apartments, we have rentals, we have a women's shelter, we have a trailer park, we have government subsidized housing, 2 of them. And it's all living in this area. And I think it would be the wrong decision to build more or allow more multifamily housing to be built in this small area. And that goes on to my second point, which is I am concerned about traffic and safety that this will create. I was on scene when there was a fatality at that site. When there was a traffic fatality, a man died there. And it's because there's so much traffic and so much going on in that area. And to add more traffic in that area, I think would be a liability to our safety. And our kids are walking to school that way. You know, we have 3 schools there, and my kids attend all 3 of those schools. And I am concerned about safety that will come when you keep adding more and more traffic. I'm also concerned just about traffic getting in and out of the neighborhood. Right now, we have a traffic issue getting out of that square because we have 2 lighted intersections that are now backed up. We have 300 West, which Aaron talked about, which is constantly backed up and you can't get onto 200 North. And then we have this intersection at 50 West. And I do have concerns about that the more traffic we put in there, the harder it's going to be getting in and out of areas. And so I hope that, and my ask would be that before we make a decision, if we're going to look at saying yes to this, that we do a really comprehensive traffic study on what this really does to this area, and do we really want to create this in this area, or do we need to spread ourselves out more so we can better support these housing? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On 3rd West. I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about was, again, talk about safety. I go through this intersection every single day on the way to work, on the way home from work. I have 4 kids who've walked through this intersection to go to school. All 4 of them still have kids that go to the junior high and the high school. And safety is a big issue. I run on that intersection 3 times a week. It's busy. Cars are already parked there because of the dental office or the orthodontic office that's right there on both sides of the road all day. So it's already crowded. And at busy times of the day, it's very difficult to see kids that are crossing the road, both in the afternoon and the morning. I also wanted to talk about single-family homes. We've talked about, it's been mentioned here before, but nobody dreams of living in a townhome or an apartment. There may be a few who don't want to take care of a yard, but people want a home. Surveys overwhelmingly show this. And it was mentioned in the Planning Commission that they cited a survey by Envision Utah. It's just not true. Everyone, the vast majority want single-family homes, but we talk about affordability. That's a supply and demand issue. If you build more single-family homes, smaller single-family homes, you're going to bring the price down because there are more options for people. So let's build smaller homes. Let's leave it how it is zoned now, and we can build 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes, an entry point for people. By putting more townhomes there, you're putting people in a transitory place. They're going to either rent or they're going to be there and they're going to want to move quickly because they want to be in a single-family home. Everybody doesn't want a large yard, so a small home with a small yard would be perfect. The reason people are moving into townhomes and apartments is because nobody's building the single-family homes. Because developers make more money when they can put more units on a smaller lot. Why did we move to Kaysville? Because it was a nice bedroom community. There's not a lot of businesses. We live here. We've been here for 10 years. We plan to stay. We're invested in this community. We like how it feels. That's why we moved here. Another thing that was mentioned in the Planning Commission by the chairman there was that, you know, we're not doing our part and that the other cities are building these communities. Well, Farmington is 4 miles away. Layton is 3 miles away. It's not like there aren't options here close to us. They're within walking distance. And so to say that we don't have options available for people in this area is just flat out not true. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that in the end, this really boils down to money. It boils down to money for the seller who makes more money if he sells it with a rezone. It boils down to the purchaser who will make more money for the units that they put on there and for the city. The state has money at stake for the city. Let's not let this decision be driven by money. Money doesn't live here. Money doesn't vote. We do. We live here. This is our community, and we should have some say over it. You represent us. We vote for people who we hope will represent our desires in the city when these types of decisions are made. Let's not have these meetings be for show. Let's have it mean something when the people come and they voice their opposition to things.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Well, it was.
Not for you.
Speak into it.
Not for you.
Okay, my name is Nika Roundy. I live at 303 North, 500 East. While it's not directly related here to this property we're discussing tonight, this whole area is an older section of Kaysville, and it's a significant older section of Kaysville. So we are all related in concerns that everybody else has. I want to echo what Mayor Tran said earlier tonight, about how much I appreciate everyone on this council, that you've been receptive. We've talked about a variety of things, and I just appreciate your willingness to come out and talk about your packet and the things that are going on in Kaysville. I am wondering if the pendulum is starting to swing. I watched the news last night, and one of the feature stories was Davis County has some money that they're giving to first-time home buyers, and they called that the American Dream. The American Dream is to buy a single-family home. And just this year, Senate Bill 240, the First-Time Home Buyers Assistance Program, to help Utahns live the American dream and build equity in their future. And I just think that we as a city, you as council members, can take into consideration this American dream that Kaysville City apparently is best city in America this week. And we can add to that and be the American dream. And I just caution about so much unknown of what's going on here. And I want to thank you for your attention and for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Nika. When?
Thank you, City Council and Mayor. For this rezoning, I want to see it a different way. When I checked the zoning code of the neighbor cities, I found something interesting. For the Farmington City, there are R2, R4, RA zoning, multifamily zoning. The RA states 10,000 square feet for each single family or two family dwelling plus 4,000 square feet for each additional dwelling until a maximum of 4 dwelling units per building and not more than 2 buildings per lot, that meaning 8 units per acre. And then their business park zone, BP zoning states gross density should not exceed 8 dwelling units per acre. And for the Centerville City, RM zone is 6 units per acre. RH, high density zoning, is 8 units per acre, and 12 units per acre is allowed with conditional usage. According to Kaysville City Code, 16 units per acre for RM zoning without any conditional usage. So RM zoning is multifamily zoning for sure, but is it residential or commercial, or a commercial zoning disguised as a residential when they pursue the limit of this zoning could offer? And another concern, one of the neighbors mentioned to me earlier, what could happen if the owner don't provide a building plan or plat plan? They don't have to demolish the current house. They could keep it and squeeze all 36 units onto the rest of the land. That could happen. Nobody wants to see that. And just now the gentleman mentioned, it reminds me of something. The entry-level single family, we want that. And Kaysville City could provide it. I remember that there's R16 zoning, 6,000 square feet. So I did a quick math. This lot allow 17 units, R16. So that should be enough for them. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, so we'll close public comment on this action item, and we will invite the applicant to come up. Hal? Come on down.
Well, Mayor Tran, council members, public at large, I come in peace. There's been some speculation about selling this property. A little bit of history. Built in 1873, the Burton family bought it in 1913, so that's 110 years ago. It's been in the family 110 years. If there's anyone sensitive and tender about selling the property, it's us. It's been ours, okay? And this we all know, once it's gone, how do you get it back? I'm fairly prejudiced about this, but I think it's kind of one of a kind.
Can you not hear? Would you be able to put the microphone a little bit closer to your? Mm-hmm.
We feel like this is a one-in-a-kind property, and we're very reticent about having to do something. 3 years ago in September, I had an ischemic stroke, and laying in intensive care for multiple days, started to think. Now, you might look at me and say, this man could be a cover man on a health magazine, but I'm in my 76th year. I take a lot of pills in the morning. I take a lot of pills at night. I don't know if you'll have to carry me out of here. No one knows their shelf life, okay? This deals with estate planning for us. I have 4 children. We cannot continue this on with a singular child. The best way for us to divest our properties is to have a sale. I've heard a lot about money and money and money, and that's not our motivation. Our motivation is estate planning and getting our affairs in a proper order for what is inevitable for all of us. So, if I'm correct, Melinda, the R13, or the 13 townhomes and twin homes, how many residents is that? Can that be 26? Yes. Common wall. So in the twin homes, you've got common wall. You can have 26 residents, and we're hearing noise about a couple dozen townhouses. We really don't have a say in how it will be divested, but what we do know is that if it's 24, 28, 32 townhouses, or 26, right now 26 people can live there. And the data that was shown us a while ago said there were 260 trips a day. More trips were out of the twin homes than any other option. So if we were to do nothing, if there was no rezone, you're guaranteed to have 13 to 26 residents living there. So I don't know how many people have thought of that. It's a very slow news day at KSL. They led off with the top story, Kaysville Council meeting tonight, okay? And it was about people don't want to change the character of the corner. They don't want more people. They don't want more traffic. They don't want more noise. One of the council members, may I quote, said, "This is one of those that I am confident that I'm going to vote no for. I've heard from plenty of neighbors against the rezone. The neighbors are upset for good reasons. They bought their homes. They built their lives around an area that is planned to be one thing, and somebody's saying, let's change it," close quote. I don't know what anyone thought that was planned to be when they bought to the the recent westerly direction. Real quickly, my mother-in-law was born in that home. 1922, she died in that home in 2010. She loved that home. And we hate to see it change hands, but something is going to happen, whether it's R13 twin or whether it's something else. Change is change. We love the trees. We love the garden. There's 27 fruit trees. It's, like I say, it's irreplaceable. And Alice, my mother-in-law, she said how she looked to the west and there was nothing. There was no freeway. There were cows, there were fields, and over the years it came in. And the last little piece of development was 23 lots to the west of her, the Gailey subdivision, and she knew the developer well, asked him not to develop it till after she died. And that didn't happen. And it just really, she felt constrained to have a whole life of freedom, and now she's got homes right next to her. We took out the barbed wire fence. We put in a long vinyl fence. We planted trees. Developer said he had split the cost on the fence. He never did. We've tried to be neighborly in a way that would give privacy to people. But where we stand right now is we've got to make decisions for estate planning. Whatever it's worth, it's worth. And the research we've done says that there will be more options and maybe a more inviting and beautiful look in multifamily than you have in twin homes. So that's my sale. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. Appreciate you. Okay, so what we have before us as a council is an action item to consider a rezone. And so I will turn over the time to the council now. John's smiling at me, so I'll start with John. Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you. I agree with you. Slow news day. Slow news day. It was the leading story. Hal, I'm going to just kind of review some of the things that were said and also thank everybody for being here. I really enjoyed Kara's voice about it being a premature plan. I especially enjoyed the word wonky because I think that that's a good definition of that turn right there. It is wonky. Lori, your investment in historical, there's nobody else here that could feel more passionate about that. And so I'm so grateful that you would be here and talk about that. Chris, Mr. Doxey, your time and efforts in researching the different comments that the Planning Commission made, that was pretty awesome, and I'm sure it required a lot of time and effort. Garrett, also research into that study, and then also the conversation about the compliance with state. That's something that I'll talk about here in a little bit, but I appreciate your words on that. And also talking about it being premature. Aaron, I want to thank you for your research into the general plan. That's just like exactly why we did it. We spent 2-3 years on that, and so it's nice to know that somebody else has read it, because it's a lot, and it is the word general for a reason. I think you could probably pull different things from it depending on what you want it to say, but I think the most impressive thing you said was that the protect and preserve a single family dwelling. We are a bedroom community. As was mentioned by our misfit toy, Kirk, I think that I guess I could agree with you that kind of has become the misfit toy island, but also there couldn't be nicer people that live in that community. It's one that I've walked and knocked doors, and everybody's just so kind. Mark, I'm going to let Mike talk mostly to you, because it was as if you and him are kindred spirits. Everything you said is something that he's been saying for a long time, and so I won't steal his thunder. But I appreciate you, and Mayor Roundy as well, your emphasis on the American dream and single-family dwellings, and Mr. Ye's research into surrounding cities and their codes. That being said, Hal, I want to thank you and your family, the Burton family, for all you've done and for being a part of this community. My wife is from the Burton line, as I know we've talked about before. There's a couple of Burton homes in that neighborhood. In fact, we drove by one of them that's like 3 blocks west just the other day, and my father-in-law was sharing stories about the Burton home. And I understand estate planning too. We have our family ranch had to be sold, which was just like the saddest thing on the planet. But it couldn't sustain going down generations to multiple people, and so I get what you're going through. Like I'm sure it's breaking your heart to even see it. I think the thing that's happened recently that I would like to talk about is the Flint family, who's another family just like the Burtons that have basically the oldest roots in Kaysville. John Flint just recently came with a development just behind the Smith's Marketplace. And if you followed City Council, which I'm sure all of you do, it's riveting, but they spent about 1.5 years in planning this community that's behind Smith's Marketplace. And they had 4 different meetings at the Flint home where neighbors were invited. There were whiteboards and discussions. And as each meeting went on, by the 4th meeting, 2 neighbors showed up. And by the time it came to City Council, nobody really showed up. A couple people showed up, but most of them were neighbors that were coming and saying, we agree with this. We're okay with this. And I think that that's probably the roadmap that I would suggest. You know, you quoted me on the news, and what they didn't say is that typically I won't give away my vote. Something that Stuart Adams told me at the very beginning. He said, don't ever give away your vote, hold it until the council meeting. But I felt confident enough to tell him that today, because I don't like it when so many neighbors are affected by it. And what I said about the plan is that when you invest in your home, we've heard people 31 years here and 10 years here, and all these people have bought their homes with the idea that that was going to be R18. And so if they were coming in here complaining because there was something proposed that was R18, I would be like, look, you know, just like the snake and the Indian, you knew what I was when you picked me up, right? Like, you could have done your research and known that even though that's a beautiful historical home, the owners of that home have the right to develop it R18. And that's how it is. And you know, tough. I feel bad for you, but that's how it's going to be because you knew what it was. But when you talk about changing the zone, then you need to have buy-in from majority, and I mean like 95% of the people who live in the area, in my opinion. And that's where we become the voice of the people. That's where we are the, you know, legislative body, because we're representing them, the ones that live here, and we are representing you. And where I would represent you is if you were coming and saying, I want to develop this R18. Okay, I'm going to stick up for you because that is R18. But when you want to change it, you need the buy-in. And I can't promise that I would say you have to sell it for an historical. I would love if someone bought it and preserved it, but also, you know, I would be willing to say to Laurie, it's not your property, right? You can't control what happens there. But what we can control is that it stays the zoning until the buy-in is from the neighbors. And so I know everybody wants to talk, but at some point in time, I will be willing to make a motion to deny.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Councilmember Jackson, I know that you had something you wanted to say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to try to go last.
Did you want to go last? You sure can.
It doesn't
if you
matter
want.
to me.
Okay.
I'm still collecting some thoughts
Okay,
here, so it
Councilmember
might
Oaks.
be good.
You ready?
I'm born ready.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I know that you are.
No. I really appreciate folks coming tonight and the comments. I will say a couple things I said before. I've lived all over the country. I'm in a house that was my 30th move in my life, and move 29 was to move to Kaysville. Many times in my life, I've lived in townhomes. I've lived in duplexes, a lot of base housing. And you know what? I lived next to people who had lived there, and that was their dream. And so I do take umbrage, or I'm a little bit different on that, because some people are perfectly happy to be in that patio home or that town home, and that is where they raise their family. And they're good people, and they lend to the community. I heard traffic. There's a couple things on traffic. You know, if it was R18 and they came in with the plat and met all the codes, ordinances of the city, we wouldn't even be here, because they would be developing, and there would be no traffic study. Am I wrong? Am I wrong in that, Melinda? Yes. So there would be no traffic study for that. You're not talking much difference if you're talking, if it would end up being 13 duplexes versus 32 townhomes. And so that needs to be understood there. My biggest concern with this is that we have no idea. By asking us to do RM, change the zone, we're given a blank check. And we have no idea, and then we lose control as a city on what would be put there, or what would be allowed. If if Mr. Anderson came with a developer and they had out a plat, guess what? You might all be able, had a chance to look at it and say, oh, that's a great use of that property. Man, those, 30, 32 townhomes, we think that would be really okay and be okay with it. But we don't know. And I think as a representative for the city, I have a hard time just writing that blank check and handing that out. That's probably my biggest concern. There are pros. If you had limit the ingress and egress from that little subdivision, which a developer could do, whether they were townhomes or whether they were duplexes, but we just don't know. You'd look on the density in the state, what the state has required. Well, it was a month ago that we approved 2 apartment buildings, or over there that's going to be next to 300 West, across from Annie's. I think that does a lot to say, hey, we're willing to put density in our city to some, but where it should be. I appreciate that there's was it 167, higher density homes in that area. There's part of me that says, wow, what a great place to put a few more. But I understand the concern that, maybe not. But my biggest concern, and that I will probably second John's motion, is because we just don't know. And by not knowing, I think we would be doing disservice to the city as a whole for what is currently such a beautiful property. And I think whatever developer could come in there would be able to do something magical, but we just don't know. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll kind of echo what everyone said. There's so many, moving pieces on a thing like this, and I think it's important to just say thank you to residents and for the property owner for coming and explaining, kind of all the sides. We've received emails. I've had chances to talk over the phone with people and check out the area, and I just appreciate everyone helping me to better understand kind of the unique situation that different areas are subject to. There have been a lot of concerns, and I appreciate everything that's been said. My only thing, I guess, to add, pretty much everything I was thinking has already been said, but is just, and it's not necessarily, I guess I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here, just to say that if we straight deny, as has been brought up, we lose the opportunity to have any say in it. And I'm not saying that I want to approve it as is without anything to say about it. I think it's difficult, kind of like Councilmember Oaks said, it's a blank check, and I don't know anyone who has enough money to do that. So I think just kind of to offer as something to think about among the council would be, and I don't like to do things like this, like I want to have a resolution, but possibly if we wanted to have more say in what happens here, to either table or continue this item until we can get more from them. Because like Councilmember Oaks said, we could get something magical if we keep in, but if we just say R18, we potentially without any say get 26 twin home type things, which, it's whatever. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't necessarily one way or the other, but as an opportunity to perhaps have more input and really get something that we want as a city. That's kind of a thought that I've had. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Blackham.
All right. I really echo with a lot that John said, and he said it very eloquently. I don't speak as well as he does, but as I watched that planning commission meeting, I thought the people that got up and talked made very compelling arguments. And one of the things that I felt disappointed in as they left is they felt like they weren't heard. And I feel like through the general plan process, we tried to get so many people involved in that There's a map out there that says in our general plan, in our new plan that we paid so much for and worked so hard on, that this is an area for R18. R18 sustains single-family dwellings. Single-family dwellings on 8,000 square foot lots is something that we don't have any of. And as long as we don't have any of, there's not going to be any out there. And more cities are finding out they don't have those single-family dwellings. People are building apartment complexes like crazy. We see them going in all over the place. And because there's no single-family dwellings in the starter category, we have nowhere for these young professional families to buy into our community. I am not ashamed at all that we are 90% owner-occupied in Kaysville. I think it's awesome. People feel like they have a real part of their community by owning into it. And for me, it would be terrible for me to have worked so hard on a general plan, involved so many people, had a map out there, had the expectations of those people of what is going to happen with a few properties that are left around them, act like we don't hear them and just change it carte blanche. That doesn't make any sense to me. And it doesn't help provide those missing single-family starter homes that we just don't have. And for that reason, and just the technical aspect of it, not even knowing what they want there, I would absolutely deny this rezone.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Blackham. So I have a question for Nick. Will you please review our potential options as a council and the consequences that would come?
Yeah, and I'll let Miss Greenwood hop in because she sometimes knows a little bit better than I do. So this is a legislative decision.
Right.
As a rezone. So the council has broad discretion to take any action they see fit. The council could approve the rezone request with any conditions that they wanted. The council could table the item if the council wanted it to come back with more information on a certain issue. Or and if you did either of those, I mean, obviously, if you table it, you know, that gives the applicant time and tolls generally the year moratorium that he'll have if he wants to do something else. The council could also deny the application, and if the council did that, like I said, he would generally have to wait a year to reapply for something similar.
Right.
We have in the past, if they come back with something drastically different, we've
waived that, right?
Yeah, we've allowed them to apply because I think the code says something like you can't apply with a substantially similar application in the year.
Okay,
So
all right.
those are the three options.
Okay, that's good. So, Hal, will you come and answer a question for me? Would you be willing to be put on the spot for a minute? Will you be willing to come up for just a minute? I want to ask you a question about the actions that you would prefer us to take. So, what we've heard from the council is that what we've seen work in the past, and you know, I've served on planning commission and I was a council member and now I get to serve as mayor. What I've seen work really well, and John alluded to this, is when the applicant can go back and have a couple neighborhood meetings. Now, granted, I want to just preface this with the fact that you are the property owner and it is your right to develop your property. Okay, I'm 100% for property owners' rights. We are all property owners in here. You all should have the same right to do what you want with your property that's legal and permitted. So you don't have to take that option. But what I'm suggesting, if you're amenable to it, is to withdraw your application, if you're interested in doing that, and then going back, having some meetings, kind of get more of a firm idea and concept that you would like to move forward with, and maybe get some buy-in. If you don't want to do that, that's completely fine. We understand that. You do have the option of putting in your twin homes, and you can maximize occupancy on those in that way. So I just wanted to see if you were at all open to maybe having some time to go back to the drawing board, or if you would like us to make a decision based upon your application, which it sounds like would be a motion to deny, which would mean that you would need to wait a year unless you do something different and bring it back to us.
So if we table this, so to speak, then what's the time frame?
So we could table this as a council. That's not the motion that's been suggested so far, but maybe somebody would be willing to make a motion to table. If they do that, then we would give you some direction and say, okay, we'd like to see some more information. We would give the direction to staff. They would then work with you and ask more questions, get a more detailed plan, get whatever it is we feel like we want to ask for.
Well, I think dialogue is prudent.
Okay.
And our gentleman on KSL said, well, we've got a developer in the wings. You could poll all 7+ billion people on the planet and no one knows the developer because we don't, okay? We are doing this from a state planning point at this point in time. I do believe it would be prudent to table it and maybe do a little more investigation. I just think that the audience needs to know that 26 residents in 13 twin homes, in my mind, I have never, maybe I haven't seen the right development, but that is not an attractive look to me. And if you've got 26 versus 28, something's going to happen, folks. Something's going to happen. Just by nature of the fact that time goes on.
Right.
So yes, we would be amenable to some type of a motion to do a little more analysis in a way that would give you more information. And again, I don't think people have understood that you can have 26 residents there now. Okay?
Yes.
And my question for you is where it's zoned R1 8,000, and you can have twin homes, what type of a development agreement do you have for that?
So that would be something that we would work out, and you would work with staff in order to sort of put that together. It would be based upon the development that you want in place, and we'd put some parameters on it, and you would put your own in there, kind of tell us what you want to do and present.
Because that zoning exists now.
Right,
There
right.
should be some legal approach to that would require that zoning to be met.
Well, you're legally permitted to do that now, as it is, without coming before us like you're alluding to. You could do that tomorrow if you wanted to do that.
Well, I enjoy these meetings so much. Why don't we postpone this for a while?
Okay.
And we'll get back together.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so I really, we appreciate your willingness to do that. Now, I just want to make a note to the audience, okay? Sometimes these things have unintended consequences, right? For example, we had an application for Second North from a neighbor, one of your neighbors, who wanted to develop that, and he wanted to put in some 3-story, I think, townhomes, some flex space where it was commercial on the bottom and some townhomes on top, or apartments or something on top. And I know that the neighborhood was not happy with that, and he ended up selling the property, and it's now a car wash. A couple people mentioned, do we want car washes in Kaysville? Not necessarily, but what happened there is that there was not a lot of opportunity maybe to collaborate and to come together to form some kind of a solution. So I guess what I'm saying to the neighborhood, because I totally get it, I live in Kaysville, but if you guys could work together, it would be really awesome. Try to work together. They can do 26 residences right now, twin homes on the property, and it could look as ugly as they want to make it look or as nice as they want to make it look. So I just encourage you to work together. As a council, we would love to see that. We are Kaysville. That's what we do here. At the same time, respecting the fact that they have the right to develop the property and they're going to do it. So that would just be my little lecture from the pulpit here. You cannot. I'm sorry.
What?
Yes. Oh, Nate, I'm so sorry.
That's
Forgot
okay.
to circle back to you.
This was
Councilmember
actually
Jackson.
very helpful dialogue.
Okay, go
so
ahead. Go
that's
ahead.
fine.
Take it away.
Well, as as we could all see with this council, it's such a pleasure to work with my colleagues up here. Everyone brings so much talent to the council, and I am so sorry. Well, I'm really tall, so I don't tend to speak. Well, thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. I was just commenting on how impressed I am with my fellow colleagues on the council. It's a pleasure to work with them as we really try to figure out the best path forward for our city.
Would you say that one more time?
Sure. Okay, so a few things here. Okay, Representative Barlow, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's rare that we get a state representative in here as we talk about such a crucial issues that the representative handles and works on diligently year after year. And we have a front row seat here that we can share our wishes and whatnot. So thanks for being here. And thanks to everyone in the community. I am so impressed with how organized you are, and reading through all the emails and the phone conversations and whatnot. I'm just so impressed with how organized you are, and you really put a lot of thought and effort into this. And it's helpful for us as the council, the governing body, to make the right decision. I think this is a perfect model for governance. I think our founding fathers would be absolutely impressed. This is a perfect scenario. Now, KSL was mentioned a couple times. It's interesting that this was in the news. All I have to say about that is I believe that was done intentionally, and that's what I refer to as hyperbolic politics. I feel like if the news were to report on everything that a planning commission does, we would be inundated with news stories that half the time don't go anywhere. But this process is fantastic, and this is the time that we need to make a decision. And so as I look at everything here, this is an opportunity for us to move the ball forward and to make these tough decisions. And frankly, I can't think of a better way than all of you have done to share your wishes and to bring data to our email inboxes and whatnot. And this property we've been talking about this for some time, and I appreciate the family being here and having the courage to really stand up and fight for what they want to. I think that it's my wish that we make a decision tonight, because I feel confident in my vote moving forward. I would prefer not to table it. A few things that I would like to bring up, since we have Representative Barlow in the room. I'm going to take advantage. When the state looks at crafting policy along the Wasatch Front, they look too closely at property lines or at city boundary lines. I don't know of another place in this country where you can drive for 2 hours straight and constantly be in city. And so I wish that the state, when they craft policy, would allow us to grow regionally. We don't have to be Layton or Farmington. We're a bedroom community here, best community in America. It's pretty amazing. And, years and years ago, when my wife and I were looking for property, we're from Bountiful. We wanted to find a place like Bountiful. Kaysville, I never came here, to be honest, and I probably shouldn't admit that, but it was too far north. We wanted to stay south, Centerville, or that area. Well, we kept coming up to the historic district, and we would often park on Sundays and just walk around the homes, and we loved it, and it just kept bringing us up here. And for 2 years, looking for a home, we kept coming back to Kaysville, and it was because of the historic district. Now, we found a house over here, 600 East, and we love our house and neighborhood. But I wouldn't be here today if you did not have a historic district. It's likely we probably, would have just landed somewhere else. And so that is a big deal. A few other points I want to make. I think our general plan, we just crafted it. We spent a ton of money. We need to stick to it as best we can. It's not foolproof. There are times that we can that we really need to scrutinize issues that come to us compared to that. But I think in this case, we should keep it for single-family homes, R18. I think there's a reason we didn't change it when we did our whole new overhaul of the general plan. And so I just think it's prudent that we don't carve out places and that we really try to stick to that. And then, it was brought up earlier, too, that residents in downtown need to be more open to diversity and high-density housing. To me, I'm a little bit offended by that, because if there's an area in Kaysville where there's more diversity and high density, it's right here. And I think everything else was said already. So I'm finished with that, but again, thank you for coming. So.
All right, well, thank you for that. So I want to make just point of clarification. Nick, if the applicant wants to withdraw his application, can he do that in this meeting? I'm just, so, if he wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess theoretically.
He could do it before we make.
Came right up right now and said, I'm going to withdraw my application.
Okay.
Then it would just.
Okay.
It would just go back to R1. Nothing would change.
Nothing would change. Okay, so the reason that I bring that up is because I'm not sure how the council wants to vote. It sounds like a couple of people are willing to table maybe, and a couple of people would vote to just deny. If the vote to deny passes, then that means that you would not be able to bring it back to us for a year unless something drastically changed in the plan. You can come up. Will you come up to the mic so people can hear you? What did you just say? Yeah. So if you decide to withdraw the application, it means it starts over. It would go through Planning Commission. It would come back to the council, however it comes back. So I guess the decision is yours. That's what I wanted to tell you. I'm not sure how the vote will go. It could be tabled. If it's tabled, that means that's great. You'd have the opportunity to work on it, bring it back to us. If it's denied, then that means you would have to wait a year.
So if we table it, you haven't given me a time frame.
Tabling lasts how long?
You can table it indefinitely. You can table it until the council wanted to hear it again.
Okay. So if it was tabled, then we would just sort of say, okay, we'll just give you the time to work on it. You tell us when you're ready. Melinda will let us know that you're ready, and we could bring that back. I guess I could just take an informal poll at this point, right?
Mayor, I just want to point out that if he withdraws the application, he would likely have to pay the application fees again.
Oh, okay. So that's the other catch.
Just so that he knows that.
Well, I've done that twice.
You've done it twice already? Okay. Nick, is it appropriate if I informally poll to kind of see where we're at, or is that not appropriate?
If the council wants to tell you where they're at, I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
So if we table it though, and then come back, could we still withdraw it at a point in time?
Absolutely. At any point in time, you can withdraw.
I think tabling's the smart thing to do.
Okay. I will take an informal. Are you guys okay with an informal sort of?
Well, I'll tell you a couple.
To find out where you're at.
I'm ready to make.
You want to just make your motion?
Well, I'm ready to make the motion when we're ready, but I don't. But I also want to respect Hal. The issues with tabling, and one of the reasons that I will not vote for tabling is that the notifications don't get sent out to the neighbors again, and so oftentimes tabling is a way to scooch people out of the room, and the decision gets made.
You know that, I don't.
Yeah, so that's why I'm telling you. Like that's. For me, it's not a tabling issue. It's more if you want to withdraw, then if you came with a new plan, then everybody would have to get notified again.
I think with the technology we have today, everyone knows everything in warp speed.
Yeah, so that's something that. That's why I would not be in favor of tabling.
Okay, so we're doing kind of a straw poll. He's a no for tabling.
I'm sorry?
He's a no for tabling.
I would be no for tabling, just because when you're tabling something, it's because there's a couple of things that are in question. I don't think there are a couple of things in question here. I think it's the whole rezone.
Okay, so we've got two that would be in favor of denying your application at this point. You guys okay if I ask you down there?
Sure. By all means.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, like, we sent out notifications. We've had a long time to do this. We've received so much public support. We are here. I want to vote on it.
Okay, so
and
you'd be okay.
I'm not sure all the rules and regulations, but, it's a lot of people took time to come here tonight, and it's disrespectful to the entire community just to, I don't allow an out. I think we make a decision tonight, and if it's not the one you like, then come follow the process and come back in a year with different information or whatnot. But I would prefer to vote as a council.
Okay. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, my concern with it's almost the same thing, because I won't vote to approve until I see something that really has a fairly detailed plan. You know, if you wanted to come back for an RM, you know, and show something. And so I don't know that, and if we deny it and you change up something and get a developer to draw you up a plan, something that will work, then you'd be able to come back in, you know, less than a year because it would be significantly different. You know, I do worry. It's one of those be careful what you ask for, that it ends up being developed in, say, 13, and I'm going to go with 13, you know, duplexes, or, you know, that it's going to be a lot worse than what a little planned community could be.
Good point.
I mean, and that does concern me, but I have a hard time agreeing to anything without seeing.
And I'm not a developer or
You know,
the
got
developer. And it'd be difficult or maybe unfair for me to tie somebody's hands who.
Well, and that's why most times and I understand the estate planning and what you're trying to do. But most times for a rezone, in fact, every other time in the almost 2 years that I've been doing this now, when it comes for a rezone, there's already a fairly detailed plat or laid out, and here's what you're going to see. Here's what trees might be there. Here's the parking.
That's not this deal.
And that's right. And that's really the main reason I think that most of us have a hard time going, and most of the, you know, your neighbors over there as well.
Okay. Did you want to say anything?
I mean, the only thing I really want to say is, you know, if we want to not approve it, that's fine. And that's his property right to develop it at that point. And like the mayor said, for herself, I also am a big, you know, fan of property rights. I still just want to say that tabling it and potentially getting a better development agreement, I think allows us more neighbor input. I think if we were to table it, I mean, I hate to drag it out. I like to have things resolved. I don't think it's fair to anyone involved to drag it out, but I think it would be less fair if we were right now to give away the keys to the kingdom on this. Because right now, as has been said, 26 units are allowed. Well, you know, within the parameters, perhaps not, maybe a little less, but in theory, 26 units are allowed.
The neighbors aren't going to change.
Well, I guess, and as has been said, if we were to table it and you had the opportunity to come back with a different or more fleshed out plan, we could at least vote on something. So, I mean, that's my long-winded way of saying I'm more in favor of tabling.
Okay, all right. Okay, so really the year moratorium in terms of coming back would only apply if you don't change anything. Now, if you come up with a development agreement and you have a plan, you talk to a developer and you bring it back to staff, then it's new. So you wouldn't have to wait a year. So.
And again, where is the where do we see what the standards are for the twin homes?
That would be something that you would work out with staff, because that's something that wouldn't even come to us. It's already a permitted use. So you would just work it out. You'd go through the planning process. You'd submit your application, and it would move forward.
Well, let's withdraw with the idea that you give me credit next time I apply.
Okay, you want to withdraw your application?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do we need anything for that, or?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I missed.
I'm sorry, he's withdrawing his application.
No, if he's going to withdraw the application, I mean, that's very frustrating for you all and for the citizens that have come, I'm sure, but there's no action for this city to take at this point.
Okay, all right.
So just to make it clear, though, there's no action for the city to take. It stays R18.
That's exactly right. Because he's not, at this point, it's as though there was no application filed.
And for him to redo a new application, he'd have to pay the fee. The notices have to go out again completely and
It's got to go back
start
through planning commission.
planning commission.
Staff,
Everything's ground zero.
like that.
Okay.
It would be as if we denied it, because even if he wanted to come back within a year, it would have to come with a good plan.
Substantial.
And
Yeah, I mean, pragmatically, like he could apply, and our job is to process the application. But I think that the staff is very familiar with the council's feelings on this, so we would encourage him and try to persuade him to come with something different, something that would be more appealing to the council, because, I mean, it's very clear what the council's inclined to do. That being said, if he brings an application and says, I refuse to change anything, process my application, staff has an obligation to send that back through, even though we know that, you guys, we know how you feel.
Okay. And the only other thing that I'll also say is that I feel like the argument of the twin home is being like played up a little bit too much, because you would still have to build 26 homes that are appealing for 26 buyers. Like, you couldn't, by saying like, hey, it's just going to be 26. Well, a developer is going to have to want to come in and build 26 homes that could be purchased. An investor is going to have to feel the same way also. And so
They could be rentals.
Well, they could be rental.
Well,
I mean, I just still think like there's also the issue, like we're talking about there being driveways, multiple driveways being able to come out. Like the chief still has to approve. He's got to approve egress and ingress. Like
Not on a subdivision.
But the other thing that we haven't even been able to determine, you say it could have that many, but we don't know that. We don't know if he's got enough frontage to even have that many on there, so.
Yeah, I mean,
they keep giving this number of 26. We don't even know if there's enough frontage to allow 26 to be even there.
It's loosey-goosey. It's wonky.
Yeah.
I have a
I think there's an inferior product to how it's sold now in the local.
Yeah.
If he's withdrawn, Mayor, I think we just need to move on.
Yeah, okay, the application's been withdrawn. We will move on. You can't, I'm sorry. All right, so the next item that we have is ADUs, 6B.
Mayor, it's actually, I apologize, it's my item on abandoned and wrecked vehicles, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry, did
No,
I skip you?
You're fine.
Yes, you did.
I did. Sorry about that. Turn the time over to Nick.
Thanks, Mayor. Members of the City Council, it's good to be with you tonight. Ms. Greenwood and I were looking through the code recently based on some code complaints that we got, and we noticed that our provision regarding abandoned vehicles, or I guess, I don't think they're abandoned generally, they're vehicles that are being restored, was a pretty onerous. In order for a person to have a vehicle that they were restoring, they needed to either put it inside a building or behind a fence. And I've worked at several other cities where they've also allowed people, while they're restoring a car, if the car, they bought a car for their child and they're working on it to get it registered or whatever, they can put an opaque covering over it. So we just wanted to make this one change to give, we don't see this as hugely applicable across the city, but we do feel like this would allow people to park their vehicle that they're working on near their garage and cover it with a covering. Now, we were a little concerned, is this going to open us up for unsightly cars being stored wherever? But I just would remind the council that we still have the provisions of the code that relate to storing deleterious objects, which include burn machinery and equipment which is obsolete and in disuse. So we could still rely on those provisions of the code, but this would just allow people that were in the process of restoring cars for children, for themselves, classic cars, to have a little bit more flexibility on where they stored them. And we felt like covering them with an opaque screening allowed them to kind of hide the eyesore while still having some flexibility on where they stored it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Just a
comments?
question. Hey, Nick, on this, are we talking on the street as well?
No.
Has to be off the street, right?
Correct.
Okay.
They can put it on the street. Well, no, you can't have an unregistered vehicle on the street. So yes, it has to be on private property.
But this wouldn't change a registered vehicle being able to be, I guess I'm just wondering if like somebody had if the vehicle was registered, but they were working on and restoring it and it was just parked.
Oh, sure, yeah. If they're
I
gonna
guess
put
you
a new
could, I
engine
guess
in
you
it
could
or-
leave a registered vehicle parked anyway, right? There's no,
Yeah, there's still provisions of the code that relate to parking restrictions, you know, winter parking restrictions, 48-hour parking restrictions. All those would apply.
those still apply.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't see a timeline mentioned. How long can someone theoretically be working on a car? Is it
As long as it's
as long as
registered
as long as
forever.
it takes? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And the reason that we haven't put a timeline on this is that a person could buy that 68 Camaro,
Right.
put it in their garage and spend 20 years restoring it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
just kind of tried to loosen it up.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? No?
Mayor, if I can
Yes.
chime in. So we had to, okay, here's your ordinance change right here. So we had 2 code complaints come in within a couple weeks of each other on unregistered vehicles. And at least in one of the instances, the house was very well taken care of. The yard was pristine. And our code on deleterious items that we do most of our code enforcement through, you know, you could have like 40 junk washer and dryers in your backyard, but the way this reads, you couldn't have a vehicle that they were storing on because it has to be in a building. So it seemed like a little contradictory to be, you know, like we don't regulate what somebody has in their rear yard except for in this instance. And so that was part of the reasoning for bringing this forward to see if the council would be agreeable to the change.
I would almost not care if they had the opaque thing. I would almost not care if they had the opaque thing if it was behind the fence. Like, I mean, to me, that's asking a lot of somebody too. If they're restoring a vehicle and it's in their backyard, we're telling them they have to have a cover on it?
Yeah, well, we are, but that's how it was before even. If they were going to put it in their backyard, it had to be behind an opaque fence. So we're fine if that's the council's direction, this is a work item, we're happy to make changes to that. But the code already required that it be stored behind an opaque fence.
So John, what it said is if you were building your car next to me and it was in your backyard and I didn't like it, you'd have to put a fence around it.
Or could it be just?
I mean, I almost don't think we have to restrict.
No,
that we have the cover when it's in the back. When it's in the backyard, maybe I don't know though. I guess you get into if it isn't a fenced yard and they've got junk parts all over. Maybe
I would think if it's a fenced yard, that's opaque. You know,
I agree with you on that.
if there was a fence around the yard, that would.
So
cover it.
if they have a fenced yard, then they don't need to have the opaque cover.
That is an opaque.
Well,
What fence isn't opaque?
A wood fence.
No. But what I'm
A
saying
chain
is,
link fence, we would probably say,
okay.
You
can't have that car sitting junked out in your backyard with a chain link fence, as the code sits now.
Right.
If you want to make that part of your motion, that's an easy fix that staff can make as we move this to an action item, if that's how the council wants to go.
I just have one question then. So I've always been under the impression we can't legislate people's backyards, what happens in people's backyards. Is that true or not true?
So there's a lot of truth in that because
Okay.
a lot of people's backyards are part of what's called the curtilage of the home. And so there's a lot of privacy rights that attach. That being said, if you can see what's in the backyard from a place that the public has a lawful right to be, we can enforce
We can?
weeds
Okay.
and those kind of things if we can see that they're in there.
Okay, so if they have junk and,
Yeah, now where that saying often comes from is people often have a vinyl fence or a wood fence, and then in that case, we're very, very limited on what we can do. We can't look over the fence, we can't do any of those kind of things.
okay, thank you.
can I just get a point of clarification? So if I'm to understand it correctly, if we were to change it, if someone had a vehicle that they were working on in their backyard and they had a wood or vinyl fence, they would not have to cover it.
Yes.
But if they don't, if they have a chain link fence or no fence at all, they do have to cover it with just some type of opaque screening.
Yes, you
Okay,
understand
I'm fine with that.
Councilmember Hunt?
I guess my question on this is what counts as opaque cover? I, have lived in other places than Kaysville, and in a lot of those places, an opaque cover may be a tarp, which in my experience would be worse than just a chain link fence and a junked out car. What is the standard for that?
There probably isn't one. We would just rely on the common definition, so I believe that a tarp would apply. That's why I bring up the point that we could still fall back on those deleterious objects where if this is, if you buy a brand new tarp and put it on a car, it can look really nice. 3 years later, that same tarp can look really junky.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think the city has the ability through our other code, 1451, to abate that through saying, hey, look, this looks junky now. And I've prosecuted those cases, and it is subjective to some extent, but I'm happy to evaluate those, and I think judges and code enforcement and the attorney's office have a pretty reasonable expectation for the difference between what's being worked on and what's junk.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion.
Okay.
Perry, do you have anything to say? No. I'll make a motion that we move this work item to an action item, an ordinance amending the provision of Kaysville City Code regarding abandoned, wrecked, or junk vehicles.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Nope. Okay, Councilmember Blackham.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to work item 6B, detached accessory dwelling units, ADU discussion. Turn the time over to Melinda for this.
All right, so my understanding what this conversation is geared towards detached accessory dwelling units, which we do not currently allow in Kaysville. We do allow detached accessory buildings. So as long as somebody wasn't residing in that building, it's a detached garage, that type of a thing, we allow those. But when it turns into some type of a living quarters, we do not currently allow those. I haven't done a whole lot of legwork on this, but I did. So I know that Bountiful City has allowed detached accessory dwelling units for a number of years. I asked them if they could provide numbers to me on how many of those that they permit annually, but I have not received that information yet. So,
can I interrupt you for just a minute? Audience, can we invite you to have your conversations outside, please, so that we can listen and hear? Thank you.
So, just a couple other things I want to mention. I did, you all know on the council that I previously worked for Murray City. They have allowed detached and internal accessory dwelling units for a number of years. I think actually since 2010. Over that time, they've only permitted, I think, 87. And most of those are internal dwelling units. So I know that in the past when we have discussed this, some of the concern would be that a lot of people would choose to do this. I think my understanding from Murray and then a gal that I talked to earlier this year who was trying to get Fruit Heights City to allow detached accessory dwelling units. She had spoken with Bountiful City as well. I wanted to confirm the information firsthand, but she said they don't get more than 8 or 10 a year, which I would think that would be the case. Staff is happy to bring an ordinance to the Planning Commission based on whatever your preference would be. I will say this, however, and I'm sorry, I gotta stand up.
There's that microphone right there, so you can stand. Oh.
One of those handhelds.
Was it this one? Is it this one?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, so sorry about that. We had let me go back to the moderate income housing. The way the state is viewing this essentially is that we're kind of creating a contract with them saying, we put this in our plan and we commit to doing this. When we adopted the moderate income housing element last November, we had a recommendation from the Planning Commission to include ADUs as part of that plan. If the council is interested in revisiting detached ADUs, because we already allow internal ADUs, I would recommend that we, if it's something that council wanted to pursue seriously and then approve, I would recommend that we amend our moderate income housing plan to include that so that we could get credit from the state for those efforts. The staff that are working at the state level on the moderate income housing have essentially said, once you complete an item on your list, you have to change your plan and add in another item. And so it does not make any sense to me, because this is one of the items listed in state code, it would not make any sense to me to be able, to approve some type of an ordinance allowing external ADUs if we didn't have that in our moderate income housing plan. So that's really about all I had to add on this.
Okay. Go ahead. Did you have?
One of my concerns with ADUs is just the fact that there are folks that will come into town, especially on the, you think of East Kaysville, that have the narrow, deep lots, and they want to buy the home, put another one in the back, and then have two rentals. And that's part of my concern, because that's exactly what we don't want. We don't want, there's been a lot of cities around the nation where, VRBOs or Airbnbs, they've come and done issues like that. And so that's my biggest concern with ADUs.
Yeah. So we could include, if the council wants to approve an ordinance, we could include in there that they not be used for overnight rentals. We would not be able to regulate.
You couldn't regulate it just having it as a rental property.
No.
And does that, what does that do for your moderate income housing plan? You're just having rentals. And I've lived in rentals for many years, but what does that do for your moderate income housing plan?
Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, one concern I have about ADUs as well is, if, like my neighborhood, most of the homes are single level with basements. And with ADUs, I think it needs to have some restrictions or provisions based on where it is in the community. My worry is if you get a bunch of homes that are single level, and then you get a neighbor or two that builds a 30-foot tall ADU right next to the property line, and it brings down the value of all the properties. I think there needs to be some discussion about that, and maybe some provisions where ADUs can't exceed the height of the current house, or perhaps maybe a percentage within a certain percentage of that house. I think anything that we do here on council needs to be for the benefit of and have all neighborhoods in mind.
Sure. So if I can just speak to that. In my previous city, we amended our our detached accessory building code twice. The first time, we put a height limit of 16 feet if your house was under, I think, 20 feet, or it had to match the height of the house. A long story short, that is very difficult for staff, because the only way for us to determine height is to go out and field verify. And that is a lot of bandwidth that we just don't have right now. And two other points. Right now, they can build a detached garage 30 feet allowed. So whether or not somebody's living in it, just consider that they can do that right now if they're just putting their tools out there. The other point is just that, I lost it. But here's the other point. So I had an applicant or resident that had a house that was like 15 feet, 8 feet tall. And he wanted to build a shed, a garage to put his motorhome in. You have to have those doors be, I think, 10 or 12 feet tall, depending, which means you have to have some taller sidewalls. And so, it's the council's prerogative. If you want to limit the height, obviously we can. But the difficulty with that, again, is what's going to stop them from, somebody could just go put a parapet wall on the front of their house and increase the house height. And so our conclusion, at least in the last city that we worked in, was, if a homeowner wants to have a shed out back that's taller than their house, it's really an aesthetic thing, and it's their house, their decision. So we ended up just changing the code and allowing, as we do with our detached buildings that don't have a dwelling in it, to just be as the same allowed height as the home.
Can I speak to two of
Yes,
those
sure.
points real quick? And thanks for clarifying that and talking about that. But if anyone chooses to build a structure on their property, particularly a structure that's going to have people living in it, they would have to get permits from the city, correct?
That is over 200 square feet requires a permit,
Okay, and so
whether or not anybody lives in it.
Okay, so ADU, pretty much just about every ADU will require a permit, it sounds like, unless
An external
this
one,
tiny
yes.
home thing comes back, which is crazy. So in that regard, the city would have oversight, and I think there needs to be some legal oversight too. Technically, anyone can go out and do that and not get the proper permits. But if a neighbor needs to file legal recourse, the city needs to be protected as well. And I think this is about policy. I wouldn't mind if we tighten it up a little bit and kind of see what works and kind of play with some of the numbers. Because I really don't like the idea of anyone building a 30-foot wall on the property line next to my house. So.
Yeah, we do get a fair amount of complaints when somebody does build a detached building. We do get a fair amount of complaints as to height and proximity to the property line.
But the legal recourse, there's none if we don't have good, proper ordinances in our city. And I think it behooves us to have that in place.
Sure.
Mayor.
Well, every building that we issue a permit on is in compliance with our code unless we screw up. So, yeah, you change the code, we change our review process and ensure that it meets the new code.
Okay, Councilmember Blackham.
I'll be honest, I'm actually very frustrated to see this even come to council again because this is the third time it's come to the council, and the internal ADUs came about a year ago from the legislature, and we said specifically, let's vet out the internal ADUs for a while and see a while to me is 5 years or something like that to get some data to back it. If you want to turn this city into an R2 zoning district, then you just as well carte blanche, change the zoning of the whole city to allow 2 family dwellings on each lot. Because whether you call it an ADU or a single family dwelling, that's exactly what it is. It's a single family dwelling. That's putting 2 single family dwellings. We don't even know what the impacts are going to be for these internal ADUs yet. And I thought that it was going to be a while and a long time. And I'll be honest, there's 9,600 different residents in this city. I've had maybe 5 people in 4 years even ask me about an external ADU. And to change this entire city for something like that could have that kind of impact on neighborhoods, I'm not interested in something like that. And if it's something that's that big, it should go to a ballot and ask the citizens, do you want to change your entire feel of your city from single family to 2 family dwellings on every lot?
I don't disagree with you at all. And so the reason that this is back as a discussion is twofold. We did have a council member ask about it. And the other thing is, in my neighborhood, a property owner was able to legally build a secondary building. What are they called? Just a just a detached accessory building. I think it's 10 feet off the property line, and it's 30 feet high. It's taller than their house, and it's all permitted use. And I want to make sure that we have an ordinance in place to not allow this type of thing. Now, we're hearing a lot of information from the state that the state is there's some momentum and there's some interest in creating an ADU ordinance for the state. They would like all the cities to comply with it. I would like to be able to get in front of this and say, this is what we don't want to allow because it blocks views, it's affecting property values. They did it all legally, and they came through the city, they got their permits, but I'm in total agreement with you, Mike. I don't want this to happen throughout our city. And so in order to have this discussion is to get in front of this and just say, okay, Kaysville, what are we willing to live with? And then we have an ordinance in place already that's very prohibitive, and it's very specific to what we do want to see and we don't want to see. And then when the state does come up with legislation, we can say, look, this is what we already have in place. And we've thought about it, and we're not waiting for them to tell us what's going to happen. We're willing to tell them this is what we already have in place to protect our community. Because I 100% agree with the fact that we don't want our city to become like this. We don't want these long, narrow lots to all of a sudden have these rental units pop up behind them. At the same time, there's enough momentum and there's enough emphasis in wanting this to happen statewide that I don't want this to happen that's happened to my neighborhood. And it's a beautiful house, and it's totally different than the house they live in, totally different in style and everything else, and it's taller than their house. So that's the reason.
I don't understand. So how were they able to do this if it's not?
This is an accessory building. They didn't call it an accessory dwelling unit because they said no one's going to live there. I don't know if anyone is or not. They said that
they got a good view.
What are the legal ramifications if someone is living there, Nick?
So they're not allowed to live there, so we can take enforcement action against that. It's just very, very difficult because we have to prove that somebody's living there. I mean, it's the same as if you're renting your garden shed out as a house or whatever. It's just very, very difficult to get that amount of evidence together to enforce it.
But they weren't allowed to get like a separate gas line or a separate power line or separate.
I could be wrong, but I don't believe so. And then on their plans, they're not allowed to have a living space. So they can have a kitchen and a bathroom, but they can't have a separate dwelling space. Is that correct?
It's more complicated than that.
And I'm not suggesting that they're doing anything that's not legal and permitted. But what I am suggesting is that if we don't want this to happen throughout our city, I am in favor of putting together an ordinance that prohibits and allows only what we want so that we are prepared for those discussions to happen. Rather than wait and have them happen to us, I'd rather be able to say, no, this is what we're already doing here in Kaysville, and this is what we're comfortable with, and we've got it in place and we're in front of it. So that's the reason. It's not to frustrate anyone. It's not to trick anybody. It's not to say this is what we want. We don't want this.
That's not a man cave. That's man castle.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. I mean, it's yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question, and
Yes.
Mayor, I appreciate you wanting to get ahead of this because oftentimes we're constantly playing defense, and with the state legislature, sometimes we need to play more offense and be ahead of these things. So I appreciate that. But a question, Nick, you said that someone who builds something like this, they can have a kitchen and a bathroom, but they cannot have a bedroom, or how does that?
Yeah, generally, and I'll let Ms. Greenwood.
Sounds like we need to tighten up our codes a little bit.
Well, one thing that's difficult is like a lot of people have a swimming pool and they want to have a pool house, and so they want to have a bathroom there, and then they want to have a sink and a cooking area so that they can grill hot dogs and hamburgers by the fire.
Okay.
And it's real difficult when you're trying to draft legislation to say you can have a pool house with a bathroom and a little kitchen area, but you can't live there. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. Would it be possible, just hypothetically speaking, to put in the code that is permitted on the main level? Because I can see a lot of folks building an extra garage and having all of that upstairs. People with pools typically don't send people upstairs to take a shower and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of iterations on what we've seen as I've worked here, where people build a garage and they want a place for the grandkids and their family to come and have Sunday dinner, so they'll create an area above the garage where there's a big unused space. They want to be able to, people use the restroom and cook food, but they have no intentions, legitimately, they have no intentions of having anybody live there. They're not trying to skirt the system or anything like that. They legitimately just want a place for their large family to come over. So that's generally how we've used the code.
Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you. I appreciate, and this is, as Mayor brought up, there were kind of two reasons, or I think you said two, right? Two reasons why this is on, partially because of her neighborhood, and then the other reason is because I had a resident reach out to me. And I think we're doing our due diligence here, and I love all the comments and the thoughts that we've been able to share, and I think this is why it's on the agenda, so that we can go to our residents and say, this was a concern for you, this is how we're looking at it, this is what we vetted out, this is where it may or may not work for our city. I don't think looking at it means that we're going to do it. I think looking at it allows us to vet it out. As the mayor kind of said, I came up with kind of a situation, but it feels often like we're playing a game of chess with the state. And, a lot of people say, well, forget what the state wants us to do. We should just do what we want. But it does feel like we are playing a game of chess with the state where we're constantly being put in check. And when you are put in check, you have to move to survive, not move to get yourself into a better position. And that's where we're at on this. I don't think ADUs are all, or external ADUs are all sunshine and roses. I think that's why it's important for us to get on top of it now. The resident who reached out to me on this, oftentimes we talk about being able to build the sweat equity on our property. I'm not saying we should, allow these all to become rentals, and especially not overnight rentals. But it's a heck of a lot cheaper to put your disabled mother in your backyard than it is to pay to have them in a care facility. It is so expensive. This, if we can do it right, allows people the opportunity to capitalize on their own property. And if we do it right, we can make sure that it's not bad for other people, the neighbors around them. I don't think, I'm not saying we have to do it, but I think it's important that we look at it and that we look at all of the pros and cons. There are a lot of cons. There are some pros. People who can't buy a house. When my husband first got out of the military, we couldn't buy a house, and it took him forever to get a job that we wanted. He got a job, obviously. But we lived in my parents' basement. But gosh, it would have been nicer if we didn't have to live in their house with them. I mean, I love them, but it's nice to have some space of your own. This allows for that kind of an opportunity. I kind of brought up the elderly opportunity, but, I'll just say with kind of a story in my own family, my father got ALS, and he needed to be in a wheelchair. And, thankfully, my brother was renting a home that had a situation like this. I don't know if it was an ADU or a flag lot, but it was on the property and it was wheelchair accessible, and my brother was able to care for my father until he passed away. And that was a lot cheaper and a lot less stress in our family, especially since my dad said he would never go into a care facility. There was no way, and my mom couldn't care for him either. So this allows us to give those kinds of options to our residents if we can make it work, if we can make it work the way we want. So that's kind of, I think it's okay to be looking at this. I think it's okay to look at it again to make sure we get it right. Maybe before we send it to Planning Commission, or if we feel comfortable saying, Planning Commission, look at it with these kinds of stipulations in mind, fine. If we want to look at it again, fine. But I don't think we should just push it aside and say, no, we don't want to look at this, because it can be a win for people as well as a con if we don't do it right. So that's, sorry, where I'm at.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments. So
I'm going to make a motion that we not move this forward.
Okay.
I'll second.
I'm going to make a substitute motion that we continue this item.
We have a motion and a second. Do we need to vote on that first?
Yeah, the motion was seconded before the substitute motion came, so we should vote on the first motion, and then if it fails, then entertain the second motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Councilmember, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
Nay.
Can I pass? I'm going to say nay. What does my nay go to? I want to agree with not moving this forward right now, so that's an aye.
That's a nay.
That's a nay.
No, that's
No,
an
wait,
aye.
that's
an aye.
That's
Wait,
an aye.
The motion was not to move.
Not to move it forward.
Yeah, I'm there right now, so that's an aye. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I meant.
I meant that it will not, it's just a work item, it's closed.
Okay,
now.
got it.
It will
Okay.
not come as an action
Okay,
item.
motion passes. Motion passes, okay? All right, thank you. So now council member reports.
I have one thing to
Yes,
say.
Councilmember Adams.
And I know we've made it a big deal of Representative Barlow being here, but there was just something really cool that happened with the DTC up here. And just to give a little bit of history, his relatives started the DTC, and it's such an incredible place. If you don't go up there, if you haven't been there, go. And I think right now especially, it's being proven that universities are a waste of money and time. No offense, university health jacket wearer here, but the hospital's still good, right? But it's a trade school. Councilmember Tran's on the board for the college. I'm on the foundations board, and one of the things that was set up between Simmons and also the Barlow family is that they own some apartment complexes and low-income housing in Layton, and they set it up so that perpetually money would come from those complexes and would go towards the college, and mostly go towards scholarships. Anyway, they just sold those complexes, and one of our Representative Barlow's family members handed over a check for $6 million to the technical college as their share of those units. And it was a very emotional thing for me, something that's very cool that happened in our community, because it's like, we can't, the president, Darren, said, I don't think I've ever heard of somebody handing over $6 million to a technical college. And so I just think it was something cool that happened in our city. And it was just in a boardroom, so nobody really reported on it. But I want to thank his family for all they do for us.
And can I add, that would be a good KSL news story.
There we go, that would be. We'll have to get Alex back in here. Okay, anyone else?
Couple
Councilmember
quick
Hunt?
things, Mayor.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Black.
Go ahead, John.
I don't know the exact numbers, so people help me, but I believe Davis County now is making available a first-time home buyers for $50,000 that you do not have to make payments on. You do not, and you have to pay it back if you change status or you sell the home at that point, but they'll help you in the beginning. And then the other one is next week is the fire department open house. I don't know the exact, it's either Wednesday, I thought it.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday from 6 to 8:30, so.
It's not the trunk or
It's not the trunk or treat. This is the open house over at the fire station where everybody gets to go walk through the vehicles and talk to the firemen, so.
And that's a lot of fun. Bring your kids. My
Yeah.
kids love coming
Yeah,
every year.
it's awesome.
Helicopters and hats and everything.
That's all.
Helicopter hats also.
Okay,
Not that.
thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, it's not as exciting as the other two, but I am the liaison for the Communities That Care, and we did have a luncheon today. We've had some struggles getting started over the last, year and a half, but just kind of a plug for Communities That Care. It's a data-driven kind of coalition where community members can come together and evaluate, the data that indicate risk factors for the youth in our area. So we're getting started on that. So if anyone wants to be a part of the Communities That Care, feel like you have some spare time, just reach out to me because it's getting going and we're hoping it'll catch this time.
Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to just plug Kaysville Gives. We are getting ramped up for Kaysville Gives. It's a wonderful time of year where the city has an opportunity to give back. We have lots and lots of participation. Every year it gets bigger, and it's been fantastic. This is the 7th year. Mindy Edstrom from our community development group heads it from the city, and then Krista Crane is our community volunteer that organizes it from the community. So look for information and ways to participate, and we hope everybody will continue to help out because we help so many kids and so many families. Jason, do you have anything you'd like to discuss?
Thanks, Mayor. Just one thing quickly. I had the opportunity to attend the International City Managers Conference earlier this week in Austin, Texas, and got some great nuggets out of that. But one thing I was really impressed with that I have to share with the council is there was a session on team building and creating a great workplace culture that was really outstanding. They brought in an expert that's been all over the country lecturing on this and visiting organizations, improving workplace culture. And in fact, one of the city managers got up and said, I've been coming to these conferences for 30 years and I've never heard anything as good as this. This is just outstanding. But what struck me was I'm sitting in there in this session thinking, yep, Kaysville's doing this, everything they said we were like already on top of. And they're just making these suggestions like, you should consider talking about mental health in the workplace and maybe offering, opportunities for people to get, help with that, and, doing employee picnics like we did today. Literally everything on the list was stuff that Kaysville does so naturally. And this guy has been all over the world or, the country. And he said, one thing I can instantly tell about a good place that's got a great culture is when I walk into the building, I can hear people talking. I can sometimes hear laughter, and I hear that in Kaysville. People genuinely love to be here. They have a vested interest in the city. They care about their job. They work hard, and they love being here. And just had to share that because it's just something that I think that. And I've myself been in several organizations, and I've really been just so impressed with the great culture, the great people we have that truly love Kaysville and love working with each other. So I had to share that. That's all. That's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone for being here. We now are going to move into a closed session. And usually we can do it in the conference room, but we have a bunch of computers in there, so we can't do that. So we would like to invite the public to leave. We appreciate you being here, though. Thank you.
But we love you.
Yeah. You know what? Yes, we would like to maybe say hello or goodbye to you, so let's just take a little minute to do that. Is that okay?
And a bathroom break.
Okay. Yeah.
For those of us without
Okay.
prostate.
Smallest process.
We try.
I'll tell you about it later.
Which isn't